Hey, tourpreneurs, it's Mitch Bach, and just a quick note before we begin today's episode. Tourpreneur is currently sponsored by Google. We're thankful for their support of our community, and we are offering with them a completely free course helping you unlock the power and potential of Google's Things to Do program, which is specifically helping tour operators add their tours to Google in new ways that gives you new exposure and more direct bookings. To learn more, go to tourpreneur.com/Google. And as always, show notes, more resources, links to our newsletter, our business coaching community, and so much more are available on tourpreneur.com. Now to the episode.
Imagination is key. It is the thing that really separates play from just discovery. Discovery is just like, give me all the information. That's kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Like, people just like need more information. They just want it all. They want to learn. They want to see the world. But like, it lacks that interactiveness. Like, okay, now what am I going to do with this information? That's why play is really more actionable, and it makes it easy for you as a tour operator, as someone who's guiding people through experiences, because experiences are about action, right? Like, discovery in itself is kind of one-dimensional. Play is a three-dimensional.
Did you know Tourpreneur also has a Facebook community of over 7,000 tour operators? If you are not a member, then search for Tourpreneur on Facebook and join a thriving community of tour operators and other travel professionals, all of whom learn from each other, as well as from Chris, Mitch, Pete, and many other industry experts. By becoming a member, you will be notified first of any events, meetups, and exclusive content. Join the Tourpreneur community today. Facebook.com/group/Tourpreneur.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tourpreneur podcast. I, as always, am Mitch Bach, and today we are going to the playground with my friend Sam. We're going to play together. Samantha Hardcastle is the founder of The Storied Experience, and our topic today is the word play. We're going to tease out the applicability of that word to your life as an experience creator, and hopefully tease out some new angles and ideas on how to think about the experiences you're creating out there in the wild, outside of the mold of the daily grind of delivering information and, walking here, walking there. The word play is really about, for me, making your tours more immersive, more experiential, and more engaging to the full humanness of your travelers. And I'm excited to dig into it. Sam, welcome to the playground.
Thank you. I love the playground. I like to think of travel as almost like an adult version of the playground, right? I mean, we take vacation because we need to get away from the seriousness and of adulting.
Absolutely. We're banishing the word adult when it has those connotations of seriousness, and we're above everything. And even the idea of fun, that fun has to be this very adult sort of way of having fun. I really want to go somewhere else and sort of tease out, our inner child, the things that we forget that we do love. So let's dive in. This word play, can you just start by telling me what comes to your mind in terms of a definition or a starting point when we talk about specifically this world of experience design as applied to tour operators?
Yeah. So I like to say, like, you have exploration and you have discovery, and then you have play. And play has a little bit more of an imaginative what-if quality about it. So whereas discovery and exploration can just be like very, this is it, this is a destination, this is a culture, this is what they do, this is how we engage with the world. Curiosity, the curiosity that comes with this playfulness is more about questioning, like, what if? And it really opens up a world of possibilities that we wouldn't have been exposed to if we had taken things at face value. So, play is how we learn as children. it is incredibly multifaceted. I mean, there's been tons of research done like into how many different kinds of play there is. So, you have physical play, rough and tumble kind of play. And then you have like play where, you're playing games and you're playing dress up and like, those are more imaginative type play, and then competitive play. So those are just like, a handful of the different kinds of play. But it's really about how do you leverage those ideas and the ideas behind it, because it's not necessarily about bringing people back to their childhood, although that is incredibly comforting. It's about how do you take someone away from the seriousness and the mundane autopilot mode that they operate in constantly all day long, every day, every day of the week, and invite them into more of a playful mindset. And that can be really challenging for people.
Yeah, you're right. It's not a return to childhood. However, what I think childhood brings is an unabashed sense of being ready to try something new, to explore, but also gamify the world, just learn by doing and exploring and thinking differently about things, and doing it essentially without the kind of rules that creep into what we think is the right way to be on tour, the right way to travel, the boxes that we place ourselves in.
Yeah, exactly. And some qualities of play are exactly that. Like, it's less about rules and you want to create structure. You want people to feel safe, but you also want them to feel safe to step outside of their normal concept of every day. And so, for example, like, you're walking down the street and you're giving a tour, it's maybe going left instead of going right. And like, that's a surprise element that people are like, okay, what's going to happen now? Like this wasn't planned, and there's so much spontaneity in that. And I think that that's just one example of taking a more playful approach. Like, when you learn about play, like I've actually taken courses on play, and they say, let your dog lead you instead of you leading the dog on a walk. Like, that's something that is deviating from the norm of your everyday and could lead to more surprises, more things that you don't know what's going to happen. And there is this quality of uncertainty that I think is really nice and refreshing, because like these days we can just Google everything, we can know everything. And when you don't have that element of unpredictability, it can be really hard to tap into that play.
Yeah, I think you're right. At the heart of this idea of play is a willingness to be and accept spontaneity, right? To go with the flow, of course, but to also be willing to step outside your normal standard operating procedure of judging, right? I feel like almost in addition to enjoying, the default tour taker is kind of in a mode of judging. Am I liking this? Am I liking you? Am I liking the guests? Am I liking the city? This idea that I hate New York. It's dirty. It's grimy. My tour guide is boring. My tour guide is fun. I'm tired. I'm hungry. It's getting away from that level of Maslow's pyramid and allowing yourself to go somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, speaking of New York City, I mean, like when those emotions and those thoughts, like someone steps into a place that's incredibly overwhelming, and there's like just so many different places you can go in different directions you can take. Like, it's like, how do you incorporate play when it's such a massive city? And I think the answer lies in knowing really well, like, your ideal guest or visitor, what their concept of play is. Like, what do they need most? Like, how did they play when they were children? I mean, I think that's a really important thing for all of us to know about the people who we're traveling with. And so, like, you can have someone who played imaginary because they were picturing themselves like being an astronaut, or you can have someone who played like building things, right? Or you could have someone who played collecting things. Like, you could have someone who played with, dress up. So you have all these different modes of play as children, and eventually those modes of play translate into our everyday lives. I mean, someone who was curious, like someone like a nerd like me who collected like rocks and crystals as a kid, that translates into my adulthood, and I like collecting things that are like that. So, I think we can learn a lot about what our guests did as children, and then take those notions and extrapolate them into things and moments within the experience. And it opens up a world of creativity to where you're no longer just speaking at them. You're saying, okay, like this is an opportunity to challenge them, to invite them in to this play mode. But like it has to be something that was familiar to them as children. Because if it's so far off their radar of like, oh, this is incredibly uncomfortable. Like I never played like this as a children. I've never been someone who builds. That's really foreign to me. It's really hard to get people into play if it's not their own style of play. So knowing a little more about the little behaviors that people adopted as children helps you create something that is comfortable for them in the end. And of course, like you want comfort is essential for people like bringing down their barriers, but there is an aspect of play that can be a little challenging, and that's okay too. It's really like a balance between like we want people to be comfortable, but we also want them to step outside their comfort zone a little.
It's really interesting. A lot there. So much to unpack. So much. Don't worry, we've got all the time as long as our servers hold up. The first thing is that power of collecting. It's a really, really simple way to think about play because it's so applicable to what we do when we're marketing and designing and delivering experiences. Yeah. For example, it makes me think of Shantiria Early in the Travel Divas. I posted about this in the Tourpreneur newsletter a few months ago. She made custom patches that you collect when you complete a journey with her, and people would wear them with honor, with pride, sew them onto their backpacks, and every single trip. I mean, these are like $7,000 trips, and people are going on them to get a $3 little patch. But it's tapping into, so bravo to Shantiria, but what is it doing? It's tapping into that like humanness that we are of wanting to display our pride. There's a reason generals and Boy Scouts and, everybody sort of has something that people collect. I collect empty bottles of wine. My husband collects, and then I throw them away. And then my husband collects comic books. So this connects me to kind of the second half of what you were saying, which is we're tapping into essentially these core things that we love as humans, especially that we exhibit when we're children, but are latent in us even as adults.
Yeah. And we have a tendency to get away from those things. Like, I mean, I don't collect stickers anymore, but I do collect vintage cookbooks. So it's like, while the format changes and evolves as we get older. But, some people really do just lose touch with pretty much all forms of play. And I think that's really sad. But I think travel and experiences are an opportunity to reconnect them to those things that lit them up as children. So, while you may not be able to make a current clear connection between something that someone did as a child and something they're doing today, just being aware of it can help you create moments within your experience that, and I love the example that you gave. I think that's a perfect example. And it really helps people say, okay, I want to be able to usher in moments where people are dressing something up, right? Like, so for example, like dressing up something up might not be related to clothing or textiles. It could be literally giving someone, a blank cookie and having them decorate that cookie, right? So but making sure that there are no, that this is not intrinsically motivated and it's not about winning something or getting something out of it, that it's just done purely for fun. So there are ways, no matter what kind of tour experience you operate, you can infuse those qualities of play into it. And you can learn about them just by reflecting on the kinds of play that you witness. Even if you don't remember the kinds of play that you played as a child, you can go out and observe children on the playground. You can go out and observe the kids in your family. Like, what is it about the play? Like, don't burden yourself with the details of like the actual play, because again, we're not all going to go out and act like 5-year-olds, but it's the elements and the qualities of it that we need to keep in mind.
Oh my God, that makes me so sad. You killed your inner child, but go look at other children while they still have that sense of wonder and excitement about the world.
Yeah.
It's funny. You've got me thinking back to a period of my life in New York when I was a local guide and did a ton of family tours.
Uh-huh.
Worked a lot with children in small groups, and it was a chance for me to just try things because the city is so frenetic and chaotic, and your storytelling alone is rarely going to be enough for the children. Promise you. So I'd read this book later called Gamification in Tourism, and it gave kind of a theoretical framework to what I was doing just really practically, which I was just trying to make it through the tour. But I did things like I came up with a tour called Spin the Village, where Greenwich Village is a maze of streets and everybody was addicted to those stupid fidget spinners at the time.
Okay.
And so I took one, gave it to the most obnoxious kid, and I said, "You're the official spinner. You'd spin it, and whatever way the arrow pointed, we would go."
Love that.
Now listen, it's Greenwich Village, so we'd eventually just cover all the stops I was going to do anyway, because it's pretty ambiguous where we're pointing, to be honest. But the end result was they felt like they were making up this tour, and they were like, "Wow, you know everywhere about everything." And it was, they were excited for what's next. Where's chance going to lead us next?
Love
And
that.
that element of chance and group discovery together made us all feel like we were on the same team. All right, where are we going next? And what's that going to hold?
Yes. It's the group element, I think. Like they talk about play, and of course you have solo play, and it's important, but play when it's collaborative is incredibly powerful. And they say that it can be easy to step into new roles and do role play when you're in a group of strangers versus when you're surrounded by people who already know you. So like you can challenge people to adopt new behaviors, new roles. Like you can literally hand out roles to people, like, based on the stories. For example, going back to New York, like if you knew that there were people who became famous in New York and you were doing a movie tour, like a movie or media tour throughout New York, giving people roles to play based on real people who actually grew up there and became famous, that's a really cool connection. And like being able to step into a role not only allows us to see things differently, but it also enables us to tap into a greater sense of creativity. And, if it's a role that we have fun with, then we're able to take that role and find ways to integrate it into our daily lives back at home. If you were like, "Oh, I really enjoyed my time pretending I was this person," I don't know, maybe you can give me a famous, Frank Sinatra, right? He was from New York.
New Jersey, but we'll go
Damn
with
it.
it.
I am New Jersey. That's why. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, you can't get out of New Jersey. Name someone famous from a state that isn't New Jersey. Go.
I give up. Um, so anyway, it's like, how do you, if you can have that connection with someone from the past, or even a fake person, like, if you were just like being an astronaut, it's those qualities of the astronaut. It's the tinkering mindset of the astronaut that people are going to be stepping into. It's not so much about like, oh, I pretended I was an astronaut for the day. And if it makes sense for your tour, it makes sense for your tour. But for the most part, it's really about challenging people to role play in a more adult way that feels fun and exploratory.
So you've got my brain exploring right now. I mean, assuming a different role doesn't mean you need to be a celebrity or someone big. I'm thinking you could have a group of 6 guests and say you've got to come up with an adjective that is the same letter of your first name. And then when I ask you for your opinions of things, it has to be in that adjective. You could have wonderful Wendy. She's always full of wonder about everything. Bossy Betty. And play with that, because New York is a city of a ton of opinions. And why not actually let people assume the role of a certain type of opinion? And then together it gives them license to like criticize or always look on the bright side. I don't know. It could be like a really fun way to get a lot of different perspectives in the way that we look at things.
I love that. And I think you hit on something really important, is like so much of play and experience design in general should coincide with a destination. We're really talking about how New York City is one place where you can go be whoever you want to be, right? Like, blend in with this melting pot of culture. But if that's not in line with your destination, then you need to figure out what it is about your destination that does align with a more playful approach. You could even do some research and exploration into the games that arose from your destination. Like, where did the scavenger hunt come from? I don't know. But, maybe if your destination was the one that came up with that, then you have a really cool tie there. So I think that so much of the sense of place that a destination has should somehow sync up with that play approach.
In some ways, another word for play is doing.
Yeah.
Just like doing things. I think there's a type of play that's constructive play, which is painting or drawing or building or whatever. And you could be on an adventure hike and led by a really great naturist or whatever. Wait, is it a naturist or is that the nudist?
No.
All right. That's fun. That's good play.
Nature. Naturalist.
Naturalist. That's right. God, and it's a dry January and I'm already saying. So you're on a hike with a nudist, and I mean you could stop, just give a moment for the guests to, I don't know, you could give them pencil sketches and tiny little pieces of paper and just say, I want you to take a moment and put away your phone, stop taking photos. I want you to see the light, see the rocks, see this moment in your own way. I'm going to give you some colored pencils and a little piece of paper, and I just want you to take away a sketch of your actual experience engaging with this landscape instead of just taking a photo and moving on. That's play.
Yeah, exactly. And you could encourage people to use nature, objects from nature to create something. I mean, anytime that you're challenging people to do things a little differently, I think that is the truth. Because if you're someone who, going back to this idea of like, if you're someone who builds and you're someone who builds all the time, then that is not playful for you. It can be fun and enjoyable and satisfactory, but because it's an everyday occurrence, it doesn't have the same element of play. So play is often so heavily tied to stepping outside of the norm and doing something that shifts your perspective. And I really think that the intrinsic motivation is a huge part of what makes play. If you're doing it out of the pleasure, of the pure pleasure, not just because someone told you to, Like there really has to be an element of like, I just want to do this. Like, and that's another thing. Like when you do have an experience or an activity that is super structured and there's no space for deviation, there's not room for play there. And I think that you kind of have to structure and start your experience, your tour, with an invitation to say, like, if you see something and you want to do it, like, let's talk about that. Like, let them know that there are opportunities to go beyond just what is on the itinerary list or whatever it is that you're doing. And that, as you said, like the example with the fidget spinners, like putting people in control of, and that really kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off you too. Like if they want to do something because their curiosity is leading them in this direction, that's going to feel a lot better for them than just saying like, oh, well, I have to do this. And this is, this is what we have to do. And that doesn't feel good for anyone. I mean, no one as a child, like being told they had to do something, right?
Yep.
Takes the play out of it.
I learned this back when I was leading cemetery tours of Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. And first thing we'd enter and I'd launch into a lot of history and tell it in a really good story. But it was like, I was actually robbing them of a moment of awe, of discovery, of revelation, because they'd enter a place they had never been. And it's so different than what they obviously see anywhere else. Like the perfectly manicured lawns, the gravestone or the headstones in the exact perfect rows, this kind of magnificent mansion on the top of the hill. And I realized much better than any great hook or story or words that could come out of my mouth was two things. One, I would say, I want you just to take the next 11.7 seconds and in silence, just look around.
Yeah.
And 11 seconds is about 29 minutes on tour of silence from a tour guide, or from me at least. Right. And then I would just start by saying, what do you see? What did you notice? Yeah. That's a form of play. We're not saying I need to bring out Legos and say, build a Lego model of these graves.
Yeah.
Play is letting your imagination run and notice and savor and understand in your own way, in your own language.
Yeah. There's a great quote, and it says something along the lines of, that is the first step to play. That wonder and awe is the first instance of play. And it's what you do with that really matters. And, I think that you bring up a really good point. So there's play that's like just pure, like in your mind, curiosity. And then there's play that's actionable. And it's good to have moments that throughout your tour where you're moving from one to the other. You do want to create some engagement that is like physical movement, physical tinkering. I mean, that's always great to have. But I think what you did is starting off with this moment of orienting. That's what they would call it in the psychological somatic space, is like, if you don't give people that moment to orient, to figure out what's going on in their environment, it can be really disorienting, and it can be really hard for someone to jump into the next part of play, which is the more active, physical, interactive side of things. So you do want to kind of set people up for success, because it's not easy for people to just switch on and switch off from play. They need to be warmed up. And again, that awe moment, that inspiring moment is the perfect, like if you imagine like a light, a match, like it lights the match for play and it gets things going.
Yeah, that's such an important point. You need to really create the conditions of safety that promote that kind of willingness, or even provoke it, that make people want to do that. So maybe you don't start out by saying, all right, now we're all going to play dress up in the first moment. You create bonding moments throughout the experience or whatever. And maybe, here's an example. Maybe the Flying Bike tour company in Asheville, North Carolina, the home of the Wright brothers. And maybe you take them on. I know Torin and Alice and Richie, they're a great company. Suddenly thinking, you go on this great electric bike experience, and at the end of it, they've got a physical shop. You come back to the shop and and you give a little story and say, by the way, just down the road is where the airplane was invented. And I feel like these electric bikes almost went as far. And I've got a table of mustaches for you to dress up like the Wright brothers and get your photo with our bike. And as a Wright brother riding the bike, and we'll take that photo.
Yeah.
That means something more at the end of the experience when we've all bonded and had a great time than if it was like, all right, welcome to the tour, put on your mustache.
Yeah, you need to warm people up a little bit. I mean, while there are really good icebreakers, and of course they're important, and icebreakers, I would say, in themselves are really good opportunities for play. Like, how do you set the tone? Like, I remember I was creating an idea for a tour, and I went on a tour. I wrote an email about this. I went to this oyster farm, and people were like 15 minutes late. So we were literally just sitting there waiting for 15 minutes for other people to show up. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But what if there had been an opportunity to actually play a game where, like, you create your own matching deck where you're matching the animals of the local ecosystem and maybe, facts about oysters, whatever, matching these and playing a memory game so that you can, instead of just standing at and staring at the wall, you can actually sit down and be learning and playing a game with, whoever you came with, or even the people around you that are also waiting, so that you're actually like learning and doing something instead of just like sitting there.
Yeah. What if you've got a group of 6 guests that are waiting for the other 5, and they're just all sitting around? What if you, as the guide, go up and say, all right, hi, I want you to meet George over here. Your job is to figure out a place that you have both visited together that starts with the letter T. And then they go over there. They've got to sit there. They go, well, have you been to Oklahoma? Do you go to Tuskegee much? And she's like, sir, I am from Rio de Janeiro. I do not know what you're talking about. Or whatever. And maybe they don't think of something, or maybe they do, but they're talking and they're engaging and they're probably laughing or whatever, much more than having them either just say nothing or that stupid icebreaker that I hate, which is, where are you from?
An icebreaker?
What's that?
Is that even an icebreaker?
It's like the way I see a lot of tours get started.
Yeah.
Don't get me started, but I hate it because it doesn't do much.
Yeah.
It doesn't do much to break the ice or get anything started. It just seems to be like the normal thing.
Yep.
And sometimes that's the only question that you as the guest get asked on a tour.
Well, like, what if you took that and instead of answering with words, you had to act out or create a symbol or do something that represented where you were from?
And everybody has to guess.
Exactly. So, there's ways to and it's really just about being more playful and fun. Of course, it's not about like jumping around, being like children, loud, rowdy, crazy. It's really about like just creating more engaging moments that provoke curiosity and get people smiling. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what play is about. And bonus points, if you can help them step into another version of themselves and use role play as a means for impact, but it's not necessary. I mean, of course, like, that's when I work with a client, like, that's always my goal. Like, I want to be able to see what that impact was. I want to be able to challenge people to go a bit further with who they're becoming and push them a little bit outside their comfort zone. But it doesn't have to be like that. It really can just be pure fun, pure nostalgia. I mean, giving people that reminder of what it's like to be free and inhibited as we were as children.
I like something that you once said to me, which is that play is the remedy for seriousness.
Yes.
It's I would add to that self-importance.
No.
What I am doing is cultural heritage interpretation of an important Renaissance site. Fine, but people are still people, and they all had childhoods, and secretly we still want to be filled with wonder and delight and have a good time.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone still has, like, we may not want to be astronauts anymore. We may not want to be lava jumping, explorers, raise your hand.
Like we all did. Like we all did.
But like, we grow up and our dreams change, and it's no longer about doing those crazy things. But it's not to say that we all don't desire to get to the next echelon of ourselves. I mean, that's like, as you said, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-transcendence, self-actualization. We're all looking to be the best version of ourselves. And if stepping into other roles helps us with that, to kind of get a feel for what it's like, then yeah, I think travel and tours can be a vehicle for that, for sure.
It undoubtedly is a method in which we grow, whether that's our intention for a travel experience or not. Certainly it happens on a 10-day journey where you learn a lot about yourself and others and places. It happens on a 2-hour journey. I've been self-consciously trying to talk about like the walking tours and things that I've done, but just to make sure people know that this is something you can inject into a 1-hour experience. In fact, even more so, you can set that stage in a really interesting way. But on those longer journeys, I think it's also really more important to make sure that when you look at all of your different places you're visiting and all you're stopping, if you're a multi-day operator, to inject difference into those experiences in the way that you as a group are experiencing them.
Yeah.
Making sure, just like my dog has 938 stuffed animals and each one is a different experience for him. Murdering the T-Rex that's 9 times his size is different, and he has a choice. He wants variety.
Yeah.
And I think probably the best model we have around our dogs for this play, because it's how they learn about the world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many similarities between us and animals when we look at our brains and how it works. It plays how we learn. Play and neuroscience are incredibly linked. So neuroscience is how we grow, how we adopt new behaviors, or how we reinforce current behaviors. And if we don't have play, then we really don't have a means for continuously learning on like a grander scale. I mean, we can read books. That's not really play. We can watch movies. We can learn constantly, but that's not play. And as someone like me, like I can be really stuck in the words, and like I'm a writer. I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly consuming content, and there's just this innate part of me, like I would say it's almost like the animalistic part of me that's like, I cannot read another thing. I have to physically go do something or I'm going to go crazy. And it happens to me a lot. Like, I think this is like the drive within all of us to go experience things. And it's almost like that curiosity becomes too much. It's like, if I read one more interesting fact, I'm going to explode, because I need to actually go get my hands on something. I need to go create something. I need to go just physically be a part of something with everyone. And I would say that we all get to that point where it just like explodes, and we're just like, okay, what is it? Like I need to find an outlet. It's like a creative outlet for this, right? So yeah, I mean, it is incredibly from a physical, bodily, neuroscience capacity, play is essential. And I think because of adults, we're adulting. I know you said we're not allowed to use that word. I think as we get stuck in this territory, we really do become detached from play. And if our vacations and our travels are the only outlet for it, then it's really pent up. So like the demand for more playful, more creative experiences is there. So this is like my plea to you as an experience designer, to another experience designer. Please start thinking about ways to become more interactive, become more challenging. Don't just assume that your people want to learn, because we have had it. We do that every day, day in, day out. I mean, I know not everyone is like me, but there are a lot of people like me who are just constantly consuming and are ready.
An audience of tour guides is like you, or tour operators who do tons of research, because they're always learning about their place, and they love that. You know, you're not your customer,
Right?
That's so important to remind. I have to remind myself of that all the time. What I love what you're saying is, I mean, two things. Number one, don't help people to not take themselves so seriously, and don't take yourself so seriously. Don't hold your beliefs about the world so seriously, about what you think your guests want or what you think you're doing. Play is about imagination. And I studied philosophy. There's I can't believe I'm bringing this up, but it's called perspectival adumbration. It just means, I know.
That's shaming.
It's disgusting. All it means, like philosophy, all it simply means is look at things from different angles, right? See things from all the different angles, and you learn so much more. And play is a way of doing that. It's a way of making sure you don't hold your particular belief or perspective with too much weight. And it's a really powerful thing for us to learn personally as experienced creators, but also for our guests to learn when they are primed to be in that posture in a travel experience. It's really hard to know everything about the place that you're visiting where you know nothing. And so they're ripe for permission to play with themselves, with their beliefs, with their environment, with all of that. It's so powerful.
Yeah, the new environment is really key because, as you said, like, it opens us up. We are no longer holding on to all the things that we think we know. We are now in the unknown. And that is where play is for sure the most powerful and the easiest to kind of start leaning and nudging people towards. And I think that, as you said, imagination is key. It is the thing that really separates play from just discovery. Discovery is just like, give me all the information. That's kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Like, people just like need more information. They just want it all. They want to learn. They want to see the world. But like, it lacks that interactiveness. Like, okay, now what am I going to do with this information? That's why play is really more actionable, and it makes it easy for you as a tour operator, as someone who's guiding people through experiences, because experiences are about action, right? Like, discovery in itself is kind of one-dimensional. Play is a three-dimensional. And if you can just ignore discovery for now, just like pretend like discovery doesn't even exist and just focus on play, it will give you so many more tools to create something that's engaging. Taking any moment, you could just take any moment and say, okay, how are we going to playify this? Like, I just made that up. I don't know if that's a word. How are we going to playify this moment in time? And all you have to do is look at the qualities of play. Look at the way people play. Look at the different ways that people engage. And then you have your answer. You could literally make a list if it makes it easier for you to say, okay, well, these are the 10 qualities of play that our tour and our brand and our concept are really connected to. And we want to make sure that these 10 elements of play are peppered throughout the entire experience. And there you go.
What you're creating is a playcation.
Playcation.
We can placate.
I like it.
Placate your tour. I think probably the most practical thing we could say is, number one, the brain craves this. So we crave it as humans, and humans are partially brains, and our brains crave it. You and I both have a man crush on Paul Zak, the neuroscientist. And one of the things, he says over and over again is the 20-20-20 rule, that you need at least as much time in kind of brain rest as you do in receiving information. Yeah. If you've talked for 20 minutes straight as a tour guide, then your guests basically need 20 minutes of processing time. Something else, they neural fatigue is real. We need to shift our modes. And to start, it might just be looking at your tour, all 6 stops or all 8 days, whatever it is, and picking a moment and saying, how can I placate this?
Yeah.
I'm going to turn this into a placation.
I love it.
Start small. Do you have any final advice for operators who are hearing this and saying, that sounds like fun, or they had fun talking about it? It sounds like maybe they like to have fun in life. Where do I begin? What?
I would say that, and this goes back to a lot of advice I give just pretty much with anything, is start looking at your own style of play. Start looking and reflecting on how you like to play as a child, how you like to play as a teen, how you like to play now, and what are the common threads? Because if you like it and it makes you feel good, there's a high chance that your guests are also going to have fun. And when you can create experiences that are shaped around this element of play, you can market it. It doesn't just stay in your experience. It oozes out into everything that you do. So if your marketing is more playful and you're speaking to experiences more playful, then you're going to attract people who also value and care about play. So it really has like a ripple effect. It's not just like, oh, okay, we're just going to do this thing and pray and hope it works. I would say get intentional about it, and there's a whole world of people out there who need this. So put all your fears aside, just have fun with it and see where it takes you.
This is where I'm going to get a little woo-woo. You create the reactions in people that you kind of put out there, at least on some level. And I know this because I used to be handed the difficult, quote unquote, clients for this tour operator that I used to work for. And I used to seem to never have a problem with them. And I think part of it was I didn't authorize them to take any of this too seriously.
Yeah.
They were like fighting with a puppy. I would just be fun and playful and curious and not feed their desire to turn this more serious than it is. And that's contagious. But miraculously, somehow, all of these horrendous people I didn't really have a problem with. And I think it was because of my inherent love of play.
Yeah, I think people are always not always. There's going to be a lot of people where seriousness is their MO. They are just, again, many people. That's what they do all day. Their job is serious. Their family operation is serious. There's always something coming up in their lives that they have to deal with. And that just is a part of their life. And it's, as I've said before, it's not easy to switch off that seriousness for a lot of people. So the more you can exude play, the more that it will be contagious. And this behavior of play is an imitation. It's like, oh, wow, look, they're enjoying themselves. Wow, I would love to enjoy myself for once in my life.
Yeah. Beautifully said. I love that. I hear our moms calling us. We have to exit the sandbox and go eat our peanut butter sandwiches with the crust cut off. But I really enjoyed getting down and dirty in the sandbox with you and talking about this topic. Thank you, Sam, for, thank you.
Good conversation.